This illustrated lecture was originally presented on May 22, 2025 at the University of Alberta in Edmonton in conjunction with the symposium Oh to Believe in Another World, exploring photo printing, photogravure, and creative collaborations. David and I are honored to be included in this symposium and exhibition. We thank everyone for their contributions, with special thanks to Stephen Dixon and Luke Johnson. In 1993, David and I embarked on our collaboration into learning photogravure. I had been using the camera as a recording tool and then used hand-drawn print media to interpret the photo information, creating a graphic mimesis of photographic images. This led me to the desire to meld the two visual languages into one integrated process. David's gum and silver prints were made using scratched negatives. David decided to learn photogravure because it is the intersection of photography and printmaking. At the birth of photography, when image permanence was elusive, the printmaking tradition offered photography's inventors Niepce and Fox Talbot solutions to this problem. From its inception, photogravure was a hybrid process. When David and I talked about our individual interests, he showed me examples of photogravure, specifically this print by Paul Strand. David and I were fortunate that we had the complementary skill sets that were fundamental to photogravure. Our collaboration has always been rooted in the process. It took us an entire year to be able to get something on paper. And as awful as these prints look, we were pleased. There are so many variables in creating a photogravure that we had to keep track of every step. We quickly knew that we needed help, and were fortunate to get in touch with John Goodman, who shared some key pointers during a phone conversation. Building on this, we modified our methodology. At his suggestion, we gathered all the historical reference materials we could find, as the current literature was scant. We sought out the few other contemporary practitioners and formed new connections. Gathering historical and contemporary information evolved our process. We could now integrate the subtle tonalities of intaglio with high-resolution photographic information. Swine 1 retains an incredible amount of photographic detail. In Swine 2, the copper gravure plate was reworked physically. For both David and I, the work we produced confirmed that this was the process we needed to learn. John Goodman's use of gravure is predominantly as a photographic medium. In 1995, John came to Corner Brook and during an advanced level workshop shared his process with us. This experience took our ability to a new level. We continued to produce our individual bodies of work and gain further understanding of the complex interrelationships of the process. Part of exploring the fusion of print and photo has been to investigate a range of camera types, such as the pinhole camera or the medium format camera. During this time, our process is entirely analog. In learning the process, David wanted to test the idea that this medium could make photographically perfect images. Bird Box is the largest copper plate gravure David has made. 16 by 20 inches is the upper limit set by our equipment. Typically, we make intimate scale images. Our knowledge of photogravure and its potential was expanded by sharing the process with others during workshops, such as the one I did at the University of Alberta in 1996 or at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. Our understanding of the range of photogravure was increased through its integration with other processes. The hybrid nature of photogravure incorporates the photographic image into the book while maintaining its dual nature as both a printed presence and a photographic record. In Bestiarum Excerptum, David combines hand-drawn intaglio, photogravure portraits, letterpress text, and gold leaf embellishment. In this suite, the illuminated manuscript meets bad taxidermy and challenges anthropomorphic treatment of animals. In the gallery, David wanted these portraits to simultaneously deal with issues of iconography, poignancy, humor, and the abject. Graphic elements are again combined via photogravure because of its receptiveness to appropriation and manipulation. Along with our desire to use this process for our own art making, our role as educators made us very aware of the need for more current publications about the process. In 2001, our focus shifted to producing our book, and in June, we received confirmation of publication from Focal Press. Over the next 2 years, we tested technical and material aspects and collaborated with several people, including Dr. Jeff Rayner-Canham, Sandy King, Mark Katzman, Dr. Holly Pike, and Ted McLaughlin. We would send Ted drafts of our chapters, and he would use these instructions to make his plates in his own studio. In 2003, the book was released. Here are a few slides illustrating how we were making gravures during the production of our book. The selected image is prepared as a transparency. The gelatin tissue is sensitized. The transparency is exposed into the gelatin, and the gelatin is then adhered to the copper plate. The plate is etched through a successive series of ferric chloride baths. Then it is inked, wiped, and printed. And the result. But it seemed like as soon as the book was out, there was significant changes happening in materials and technological alternatives. We received a grant to explore the integration of digital processes with photogravure. We attended a workshop by Lothar Osterberg on his use of digital technologies. Lothar uses photogravure to create a unique blend of sculpture, photo, and print. We set ourselves the goal of making 4-color photogravures as the context to investigate digital applications. As always, David immersed himself in the process. In this print, David used the scanner to generate the image source, and then created a digital positive. At the time of its invention, photogravure was an integration of the historical process of intaglio into the newly evolving photographic medium. Now, the historical process of photogravure integrates with contemporary digital technology. I needed to experience how analog and digital image-making tools might differ. In this diptych, the image on the left is a digital scan, and on the right, an image made with a medium format camera during the scanning process. The digital image becomes a digital print, and the film image becomes an analog photogravure. And this is what occurs when the photogravure is printed on top of the digital print. These next slides show the process for making quadrifid. 4 separate photogravure plates are made and proofed in their respective process colors. The plates are registered with a hole punch system. The order of printing and ink color can be modified for creative adjustment. And the work was used in a bookwork as well as a print. We led a workshop on this process. And another great benefit was the inclusion of our undergraduate students. In making the bookwork dyed, David used 4-color photogravure alongside embossment, digital pigment prints, and black and white photogravure. While we learned a tremendous amount by taking on this challenge, we did ultimately question the viability of creating 4-color copperplate photogravures. Running the plate through the press 4 times would flatten the surface, creating something eerily close to a digital pigment print. However, it did lead us to explore and create other forms of process layering. In these 2 prints, disintegrating glass plate negatives were scanned and made into photogravure plates. A digital appropriation was layered into each image file, becoming part of the color inkjet component. The black and white gravure plate is printed on top in perfect register. There were a select few 4-color photogravures that exemplified the potential of the process, such as the way the ink surface echoes the residue of dirt in this print. At the end of this research, I was invited to have an exhibition at Grafiken House in Sweden, and David and I also led an 11-person workshop with artists traveling to join us. Our next research grant continued with the exploration of digital media in the context of artist books. We were fortunate to work with a range of research assistants and contributors, such as Eric Steenberger and Mitch Mitchell. Through technological collaborations and sharing of the process, we discovered ever more possibilities with photogravure. The book artist Scott McCarney contributed to this artist publishing project and brought his unique aesthetic to the creation of this photogravure, collage, and relief print. During this project, we created collaborative, experimental, and single artist works using a wide range of print processes, such as offset lithography, digital printing, on-demand printing, letterpress, photolitho, interactive digital technologies, and copper plate photogravure. My content focus was the townsite area of Cornerbrook. The final piece I made for this project was a 14-plate photogravure bookwork. This project confirmed for me that photogravure resides within the ever-expanding continuum of photosensitive print processes. I had been motivated to work out photopolymer gravure for my intermediate level print media classes because teaching copper gravure was not feasible. We also used this in our work, and David used it extensively for its photographic fidelity. My first use of it was in the making of this collaborative bookwork, a response to Matthew Hollett's text. The ritualized, repetitive act of printing echoes the content of the piece. In 2016, we retired from teaching and shifted to full-time studio practice. We moved to our new location, and over the next couple of years, David built our new studios. The inkjet printers were the first tools available. My work grows from the contemplation of daily phenomena within my environment. Since we no longer had the university's support for hazardous material disposal, it wasn't immediately evident to me how we could responsibly make copperplate gravures in our new studio with our new environmental considerations. So we made work in other ways. Once the presses were in place and the exposure unit built, photopolymer gravure was underway. David has always been fascinated by miniature work and has produced several bodies of work in this scale and format. I'm still struck by the hybrid nature of photopolymer and copperplate gravures. Photopolymer gravures are made by establishing a field of black and then using light to progressively build the tones, like a mezzotint. Since the image formation is entirely through light-sensitive processes, polymer is closer to a photographic process. Copperplate photogravures result from the successive building of tonalities as the etch progresses through the gelatin membrane, much like successive aquatints. The main difference between the two is that the polymer creates a fixed plate, copper photogravure produces a reworkable plate. I value each of these options equally, and by thinking of the processes this way, the decision to use one or the other is based on the needs of the image. There's a technological advantage to photopolymer gravure in its potential to layer with other media. Making a polymer plate is a dimensionally stable process. In Where Steps Stop, I wanted to present both the situation being recorded and the human presence. The digital element reflects the lake's edge. The polymer gravure layer presents the filter of human thought through text embedded in the shadows of the image. This becomes a polymer plate. I'm using coated Japanese inkjet papers. The soft fibers and receptive coating allow for dry printing, facilitating registration. The left side is the final version of the image. The right-hand side shows how the image would have looked if printed only through digital inkjet. David has explored the same layering, but uses the two different printing methods to emphasize the contrast between surfaces. A pitted plate holds the naturally aged stone surface, and a smooth digital print presents the artificially vibrant synthetic plants. I'll close with my latest exploration. In September of 2024, I worked with Gillian Ross and Brendan Copestake in their studio to explore direct-to-plate photopolymer gravure. I see tremendous potential in this process. In October 2024, I did a workshop with John Goodman on gelatin tissue making, spirit sensitizing, neutralizing and safe disposal of dichromates, and carbon printing. I'm now applying this information and setting up copper plate photogravures in our studio. 32 years later, the learning continues.